Welcome to the Openhearted Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Open-Hearted Podcast. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and I'm joined by my main man, Photon Jon. What's going on, mate?
I had a fun weekend, hanging out with friends, doing a weird family photo shoot and stuff.
Man, I did see that on social media. What was all that about? Were you dressed up as like hillbillies or farmers, was it?
Because we all live in New Farm. It's the New Farm friend group. We did it for a friend's birthday.
Okay.
So we went dressed as farmers and did like a cheesy family photo shoot.
Nice. Go all right.
Yeah, it went well. It was really
nice. I suppose it's good to get out and, do those types of things and I suppose get amongst your mates and get out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Rough couple of weeks, so it was good. I knew I needed to do it. Get out, see some friends.
Yeah, man. I think that's the thing. Like, just being able to connect with people and just go out and do something that's a little bit different from the norm for our mental health, that can play such a huge role.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, that's good, man. That's good. But anyway, we should get stuck into it today. So today, for everyone listening, we're going to be going over creating inclusive hiring processes for neurodivergent candidates. Photon Jon, did you want to introduce our guest for today? And I'll bring her up on stage.
Yeah, great. So we've got Farida Charania today. She's the co-founder and CEO of Empauwer, who works in exactly this field. So we're going to have a little chat about that.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me, Will and Kev. I am looking forward to this.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, look, we can't be looking forward to it as much as what we're looking forward to having you on the podcast. So thank you so much. We were talking just before you came on and, we're talking a lot about, stuff around education, around neurodiversity and all of that stuff. But I think before we really get stuck into this, I might just do some housekeeping before anything. You know what? I always forget this one, Kev. But we'll get stuck into it shortly. So for anyone listening, please subscribe, like, and follow all of our social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're also on all podcasting platforms now, so please check us out there and subscribe and download our podcast. We would really love the support. But besides that, let's get stuck into this. So please tell us a little bit about the awesome stuff you're doing and a bit about your company and all that type of stuff.
Thank you, Kevin Will. So my name is Farida. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Empauwer. Empauwer is a platform which uses artificial intelligence to help companies work better with the neurodiverse talent. Now, my own background is I am actually an economist by education, a banker by profession, and today perhaps an entrepreneur by passion. I have done multiple ventures, and actually this is my first impact venture. I live in Singapore with my husband and 9-year-old daughter. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. AI, we're hearing so much about AI now. I'm talking to lots of different people within the technology space. How does AI actually work within what you're doing? It sounds really interesting.
Okay, so artificial intelligence is a very broad word, but in very simple words, we use technology to enable what we want technology to do for us, right? In terms of how AI is used in this context is that on our platform there are mainly two ways to kind of use the platform. One is for the neurodivergent talent themselves. So persons who are not just ADHD, ASD, but the broader neurodiverse umbrella. So you're talking about, acquired neurodiversity as well, people on, say, dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, dyscalculia, etc. Everyone requires different type of accommodations. So what the system actually does is that it has a digital mentor which understands the user's persona and then uses the algorithms to figure out what are the common accommodations that they would be needing, as well as what are customized accommodations that they need. So this is the first part of the system. The second part of the system is for the neurotypicals and for the employers who are going to work with the neurodivers, because all the help is available for the neurodivers to find a job. But what happens after that? Nobody tells others how to work with them. So again, there is a communication gap, and it's very difficult for people with all the best intentions, all the good intentions. It's still a very, very, it's a space where people want to do their best, but they rely on Google searches now, Chat GPT, to kind of, understand what's the best way to work with colleagues who are neurodiverse. Nobody is actually addressing that part. So what we do is the system actually takes them through a persona builder, understands what kind of training will they benefit from in terms of being able to work with the neurodiverse. So it works on two areas. One, it sensitizes, educates, and empowers the neurotypicals to work with the neurodiverse. And it also shares the accommodations that the neurodiverse colleague is going to need and some simple strategies to provide those accommodations. So it basically essentially takes away the gap, the communication gap between the neurodiverse and the neurotypicals. So it is a bridge between, say, because one is Windows, one is a Mac. So there are two different
Yeah.
systems actually, yeah. So yeah, so it takes away the ambiguity in that conversation.
That sounds actually really interesting because I think, I obviously with a lot of the work I'm doing and all that, you especially when you're doing a lot of coaching and mentoring for people, right? I think sometimes, and I'm talking about neurodistinct people when, we're doing something, but sometimes when you go, okay, well, let's book another meeting, say next week, for example, this could probably really help that person during that time there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I don't want to talk much about what we have developed because it's important to talk about why we have developed that. But very quickly, it basically is a digital platform to sensitize, educate, and empower others to work with the neurodiverse, because that's where we see the gap. You might help a neurodiverse individual to get a job, but then what? Is it just a CSR tick? No. Inclusion is always a business case. And
Mm,
companies and people within those companies need to understand this, because by hiring a neurodiverse individual, you are not ticking a box of completing a social responsibility. But what you are doing is you are adding to your talent pool. You are actually, expanding your thinking. You are creating diversity. You are creating inclusion, and you are hearing all the voices. So it's very important to bring that piece in.
yeah, totally, totally. So, so many interesting points that you've shared so far. And look, I totally agree. So, why should workplaces have neuro-inclusive hiring processes? And I think we'll probably go a little bit more in depth into this shortly, because I suppose the hiring process is just one small part
Yes.
of neurodiversity within the workplace and how people can benefit from that in itself. So why should we? What are your thoughts on this?
I think, let me just start with an analogy. Hiring is just one part. So it's like being pregnant. The work actually starts when your baby comes out, and then it's a process, right? So even, I mean, once the baby comes out, the real work really starts. So hiring, creating accommodations is all good, but once you bring in the neurodiverse colleague, then what? So, firstly, it's very important to understand that. See, neuro-inclusive hiring process brings a lot of benefits, but let's just say that companies can tap into a wider talent pool. Now, today we have this war for talent, and there is 20% of the world's population which is considered to be neurodiverse, and this number could be more. The awareness is coming in, in the recent 10, 12 years, where it's people, or rather, it has been understood that it's not really a deficit, it's just a different wiring, and this person can actually contribute to the workplace. 20% of the world is neurodiverse. 20% of your clients are neurodiverse. So basically, when you create products, 20% of users of your products and services are neurodiverse, and you need to have that voice. So therefore, one is a large talent pool which is unrepresented. So it's not really kind of leveraged, that the companies can tap into. Secondly, by creating an environment that supports neurodiverse individuals, companies can promote innovation, creativity, as well as improve employee morale and productivity. Inclusion is good for everyone. I mean, think about inclusive design, for instance, earphones, noise canceling earphones. I mean, you would know this. It was created for people with ADHD specifically, but all of us are using it today. I mean, automated doors created for people with mobility issues, but all of us are using it today. So all are good things. And when inclusion happens, and also see, people want to work for companies which are perceived to be inclusive, because they want to be heard, they want to have a voice at the table, right? So it kind of works in every way. So starts from the talent pool, encourages innovative thinking, and you bring in people who have a different way to solve problems, which 80% of the population might not see, but the 20% can look at it from a very different angle.
Yeah, totally. Kev, did you have something you wanted to say on that, mate?
Yeah, the whole thing hits pretty close to home for me, because I would have to, when you don't have a neuro-inclusive hiring process, then neurodiverse people have to go in there and mask, and so you have to right off the bat, you're pretending to be someone that you're not, and then once you get in the job, I would often find. I'm quite good at what I do. And the reason I ended up starting my own business in it, because I knew that I kind of had to do it a certain way, and I wasn't going to get the support to do it that way in the workplace. But they would love the results that I would get them, but they would get upset that I wasn't fitting the normal employee mold in a lot of ways. And and I would just have to continue pretending to be someone that I'm not, until eventually I would just burn out beyond saving in the job, and leave or get fired or whatever. And I job hopped for many years. In that respect. So unfortunately, not unfortunately, I've had a business for 8 years now, but the last time I was employed by anyone else, this wasn't a thing. Maybe there was some small conversations starting to happen, but 9 years ago, whatever, I just repeatedly ran into this problem. So yeah, I think, it kind of leads into this next bit, because I did they'd be like, why is it that you're just so good at this thing, this part of the job? I was like, well, just let me do that part of the job. I love doing that part of the job, and I do it better than anyone else. And they'd be like, oh, but we need you to be good at X, Y, Z as well. I'd be like, no, just let me do my thing, and I will bring you results that you can't get from anyone else.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally. So, the thing is, we probably do have a lot of listeners who are, neurotypical and neurodistinct themselves, so for a lot of those different people listening, what do neurodistinct people have to bring to the workplace? Well, I know myself, but what do you as a business in this type of area, what do you share with your clients in regards to what people can bring to this and to our workplaces?
Okay. A friend of mine once told me that when you meet one person on the spectrum, you've met one person on the spectrum. So, a cookie cutter approach really doesn't work. Now, because, we are on a staple diet of shows that we watch where autistic people are kind of shown to be savants and, geniuses, it's not always like that. Because, if you're looking at a room of 10 people, all of them are going to have different strengths, and they are not going to be, a copy of each other. Yeah. So the thing is that neurodiverse people also, like everyone else, bring different skills to the workplace. But because of the way they are, way they are built, they have a better ability to actually, focus on a problem and solve it. but then they might not have the same ability to socially interact with something, do small talk. Um, but again, it's different because I have friends who are on the spectrum and they love interacting. But it's just that, the face might just have a poker face. The sense of humor also is excellent, but they would just say it with a straight face because socially, they don't need to kind of. If I were to say this, they would bring different strengths to the workplace like anyone else. They are good at problem solving because they can isolate the problem, be very very binary about it, and this is a common trend which has been kind of observed. And Kev could kind of maybe just add to that, but they can do problem solving really really well because they don't get impacted by clutter. And this is to speak of people who are on the spectrum, and that's been my experience because I have 6 colleagues who are on the spectrum, so I see that. They bring a lot of creative thinking because they do not have the social conditioning bothering them, so they think out of the box ideas. Some ideas might be good, some might not be good like anyone else, but they do not hesitate to bring out that ideas. They also, like for instance, some of them have excellent recall ability. So anything that requires to be kind of, seen and remembered, they do pretty well at that. I do have a friend who's actually kind of, built an entire house without a design.
Wow.
Right.
Hectic, crazy.
So the thing is that it's all possible, but not everybody is a genius, not everybody is a savant. People are different, and so are people who are neurodiverse. Even if you just take the spectrum, it is called a spectrum because it is broad. It's very difficult to box someone in there. So what do neurodiverse people have to bring to the workplace is very simple: themselves and what they can do the best, and remove the clutter from the entire interviewing process. I mean, for a data tagging job, why do I need to have a personality? And and personality is also, in the conventional sense. Why do I need to look at the interviewer? Why do I need to, smile? Why do I need to kind of interview in a certain manner? I am doing that job, I'm good at that job, and I should be given a task to complete something related to that job so they can basically see what's my ability to do the job, rather than going and having a small talk, talking about things which I'm not comfortable talking about.
Yeah, it's I think this is the thing that we're starting to see a lot of workplaces approaching, I suppose, inclusive hiring processes a lot differently these days. Some people aren't even looking at people requiring certain qualifications these days. Like you said, your friend built a house or something without a plan, right? There are people who, especially in the neurodiversity space, who can do things without having any proper education behind them, who could run rings around, pardon me, people who may have gone to school for 10 or however long there. So, there is this type of thing where we can do so many different things. And like you said before, we are so different. I'm completely different to Kev. Obviously, I'm ADHD and dyslexic, so we've got 2 different things. But I think a big thing, and Kev and I speak about this a lot, we almost, you could probably say that we, what's the word I'm looking for?
Compliment.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Complement each other. So, for example, if we need to go and do face-to-face stuff, Kevin's able to maybe, not that we're doing loads of, we've got meetings and stuff like that. I'll be doing a lot of that talking where Kev will come in when he needs to and share the parts that really mean something to him. So yeah, it is definitely very different there. Kev, did you have something you wanted to share on that, mate?
No, kind of already. I mean, I guess the other thing would be to speak to what you said, Farida, is I came into what I do now, that I now have had a business in for nearly a decade, with no experience into marketing. It's more like data-based marketing, and working alongside people with degrees and all that kind of stuff. We'd spent years studying and just took to it like a duck to water. I'd never done anything like it before, but I was just good at it. And that was sort of the first time it clicked with me that sometimes if I can just find that little niche, and I was lucky enough to find that in my late 20s. But it was kind of exactly like that. And for all of the problems I may have had at that workplace, they did believe in me and give me a shot and saw that I was good at it and pushed me in that direction. So that was absolutely life-changing that happened.
And that's the thing. I think as well that especially with my career, I've really had to make a lot of things happen myself, because in a lot of the workplaces that I've worked at, I've never been able to get the opportunities that I've needed to be able to excel in my career, which I'm doing. But I often think to myself, imagine if a workplace did use these amazing skills that I'm able to bring to the table, how much better off they would have been. Plus, how many other people have had to go through that similar type of thing as Kevin and myself have gone through as well. Cool. So from your did you want to share something on that?
No, I'm just kind of saying yes.
Cool. Yeah, totally. Now, from your experience, what are some of the problems that you see around inclusion in hiring?
Okay. So, I have been in the space of inclusion for almost 10 years now. Neurodiversity is 2 years, but I have been a very vocal voice in the space of inclusion, because I've always seen that there is diversity, but inclusion really doesn't happen always. We are much better at diversity now because, most companies have that agenda to have gender parity, include, or rather have a workforce that comprises of all kinds of people. But inclusion is still a big question mark. If you were to look at an analogy, and I always say this, that diversity is when everyone gets invited to the party. Inclusion is when everyone is, asked to come and sit at the dinner table. But equity is when everyone actually enjoys that dinner. So I think we are far from inclusion and equity as yet, but things are changing. The biggest problems that I see, and these are very, on the surface problems, there are more problems. But if I would just kind of, talk about 2 or 3 things which are really, really important. One, the expectation that every neurodiverse individual is going to be a genius. Okay, it's not like that. And then, again, there is unconscious bias, because a lot of people that we talk to, they say that it's a CSR initiative. So even if they bring in, colleagues who are, neurodiverse, they just want to tick in the box, and they don't want to, so they don't give them real work. It's like, bro, you got them into your company, and you better just use that expertise that's available, because it's not just a tick in the box. So
Yeah.
that's one more thing. So again, the lack of understanding of neurodiversity, insufficient accommodations for diverse needs. Blanket accommodations, I will give you noise cancelling earphones, I'll give you a quiet corner, your place will not be very highly lit up. So assumption that everyone is sensitive to light, everyone is sensitive to sound. Sensory assumption. So this is another problem. With all the good, intentions, I'll share this. So there is a large telecom company which is in Singapore, and they have like a sister concern in Australia as well. And they have a department where they have a neurodiverse individual who actually works with them. I wouldn't say names, but this person actually told me that when they got into this company, the HR manager actually tried to coach them to be like themselves. All good intentions, but very dangerous, because nobody likes to be changed. It is absolutely, what do you say? It's actually absolutely damaging trying to change the individual. So lack of understanding how to work with neurodiverse people. Assumptions, please don't assume. accommodations, common accommodations, personal accommodations also are, kind of required. So, and also a lot of people actually get rejected because they might not be a good fit in the conventional way. So that is another problem. People who are neurodiverse, specifically people who are on spectrum or ADHD, dyslexic, they lose out even before they get to the next stage of interview, because conventional hiring processes are not really designed for them. um, if I'm not looking, if I'm not smiling at you, doesn't mean I can't do my work. It just
Yeah,
means that I prefer to do my work in a different way. But
yeah. I
yeah,
find that the general hiring process to be a fairly exclusive process by design, almost. We want exactly this type of person, and then the rest of you get out. It doesn't feel like the right way to do it.
Yeah, I honestly feel the same as well, and it's just like I try to be myself as much as I can through, say, a resume or a cover letter and all that type of thing. But I just always feel that I'm just not that. But get me in certain types of environments, people often say, "Man, you're switched on guy," type of thing. But how can I put that through in a resume? It just doesn't work. So yeah, there definitely is a lot of issues in regards to that. And when we first started speaking, when we first came on, we were talking a lot about education around neurodiversity. And I think, like you were speaking about before, someone, this unconscious bias type of thing, someone really wanting to help, but sometimes the way that they've gone about helping that person is in a way that it's offensive. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Mm.
Totally. So I think before you touched base on this briefly, do companies consider neurodiverse inclusion as a corporate social responsibility initiative? Did you want to speak more on that, or you sort of covered that before?
I did cover it, but I always say inclusion is always a business case.
Mm,
So please do not mistake it for a CSR initiative, because
mm,
it's heartbreaking to see that companies are willing to spend millions to tick a box in the CSR initiative, but they do not want to kind of go. And so there are, of course, things are changing now, but a lot of companies are not really very keen to have this as an agenda, because
mm.
they just feel that profits will suffer, innovation might not come through, they might be, spend too much time trying to work with people who are neurodiverse and things like that. So I think, and I can't say this enough, that please do not start with that premise that it's a CSR initiative. It's not. It's a business case. Inclusion is always a business case, and inclusion is good for everyone.
I think the thing is as well that, we're seeing, well, here in Australia, we're seeing a lot of neurodiversity hiring programs type of thing. And I think that's coming under those initiatives there as well. Because if a lot of the time I will know, and this is the thing, I think a lot of these companies still don't realize that 20% of their workforce is probably neurodistinct themselves. And then, they're not doing anything to help those people, but then they're having a neurodiversity hiring program, which is more about autism. And then these people are sitting there going, well, okay, you've got this, you're promoting it to make yourself look good, but what about us? You
Mm.
know what I mean? And I see it all the time, because I have people reaching out to me going, oh yeah, they don't care about us. I'm here struggling, but they're still doing all of this here, which can be even worse within itself.
Yeah.
It is.
I
Sorry,
feel like
Kevin.
I feel like the CSR angle can, as much as I support it in the right context, can sometimes make companies almost view it as a charity, like they're looking after neurodiverse people,
Absolutely.
and that's not the way to look at it at all. We have things to bring. It's just, like you said, a good business case.
I think the thing is, and it's interesting you say that. And look, there's probably some positives to this, okay? Because one, it's getting neurodiversity out there a bit more, maybe a bit more than what it was. Okay, so that's where it could be a good thing. But I just feel that really what we're trying to work towards is that if a company is neuro-inclusive, they shouldn't need to be promoting that they've got a neurodiversity, they're hiring neurodistinct people. It should be just a normal part of what they do as a company, not for, like, for example, you don't see any companies going, hey, we've got a hiring women program, or do you know what I mean? It's just that's part of the company.
Absolutely. I think, firstly, this whole patronizing attitude needs to stop, because it's only then you can actually see a real difference. Uh, for Will and Kev and everyone who's watching, it's a huge social impact. The 20% of the world is neurodiverse, of which, let's say, employable adults are, say, 50%. If you actually consider the earning potential of each of these individuals, if you apply a Big Mac index by taking a base of, say, 18,000 USD per annum, you are talking about a 720 billion social impact. And that's huge. You are talking about, the GDP of every country has the ability to go up by certain percentages. You are talking about people having fulfilling work. So it's a huge thing, and this whole patronizing attitude needs to stop. Accommodations need to be part of every organization's fabric. It need not be specially, and it, unfortunately, it is still, we are in this whole education phase. We are still creating awareness. Having neurodiversity programs are okay, they are good, because it's like, making sure that differently abled people also come into the workforce. But honestly, just ticking a box is not going to help. It's not going to give the individuals fulfilling work, and you're going to again be standing at the same juncture where, people will either not continue working, or they would go and do something on their own, which is not a bad thing, but they would find it very difficult to kind of, adjust in an environment which is not really made for them. um, One of the things, somebody actually asked me some time ago, that is it possible to make this person normal? And I just looked at this person in disbelief, that what is normal according to you? I think, so that is the level of, unawareness, miseducation, misinformation, which is going around. So
That's such a good point, because I would class myself as normal. Kev, would you class yourself as normal, my man?
Not really, no.
No, okay. But to me, I'm normal. But say, for example, Kev, I don't go, oh my God, here's my friend Kev, watch out for him. He's not like, do you know what I mean? That's just my way of thinking. Do you know what I mean? But to me, I'm normal to myself. So I would get offended by someone saying, hey, why isn't this person normal?
Well, the entire concept is weird anyway.
yeah, totally. So out of that, what are some examples of some things that could be done better, do you think? And, this could be neurodiversity within itself. This could be, obviously we're talking about the hiring process and all that, but what else could we see that could be done better?
So, see, the first thing is, education, because it's very important for companies to educate people when they have a process in place. Okay, when they have a certain set way of doing things, and then saying that we have a neurodiversity inclusion agenda is not going to work, because one, you have to educate people who are in the company as to what's the best way to engage with the neurodiverse. Now, neurodiversity is again an umbrella term. So, like I said, there is no cookie cutter approach that can be actually applied here. Therefore, it is very important to educate the recruiters that is your first line, and the hiring managers as to what exactly is neurodiversity, why is it important in the workplace, and what are the consequences of ignoring neurodiversity in the workplace. So people need to understand that there are consequences. You lose out on innovation. As an organization, you actually don't become inclusive, and that is not good for anyone actually, because inclusion, I can't say it enough, inclusion is good for everyone. So first part is education. Secondly, maybe adapt your processes, offer alternative interview styles, because not everyone is comfortable with the conventional style. So offer alternative ways of recruitment as well. Maybe task based test and things like that. So at least assess them for what they are interviewing for. Don't assess them for things which don't really kind of matter in their work. Yeah. Thirdly, they also need to kind of make sure that they provide accommodations like assistive technology, and simple things. Because, like for instance, I met someone who could not focus on work unless there was noise in the background, and that noise had to be something like a soccer match or something going on in the background. It's not possible for this person to focus without that. So now that is an accommodation that this person is asking. That doesn't mean you blare the radio in in your office, but give them earphones and they can actually isolate themselves. They can work on what they are supposed to. Yeah. Third thing is, again, having employee resource groups. So this is not something that you do once and you finish it. This is a process. Like I said, pregnancy is a process, but once the baby comes out, there is a lot of work. So it is going to be a lot of work. And I think one of the things which is on my wish list, and I probably should have asked this for Christmas, but this is something where I think people's promotions, people's appraisals could be tied to the inclusion in their team. Because it has to kind of if we are saying that they are adding value to your business, it should be other way as well, because they should be recognizing the value that is being added. And probably things which matter to them should also kind of get impacted if they don't do it well. Because it's not about forcing people to do, but just weaving it into the fabric of your company, and making sure that it's not something out of the ordinary, but it is the process. You want to be inclusive.
It's actually interesting. You spoke about education there, and I did briefly talk about this earlier. I think the hardest thing I'm seeing with education, and I'm connected with some really good doctors doing some really good work, and a lot of these doctors I'm connected with are neurodistinct themselves, and the research that they've done is just unbelievable. But then we're seeing a lot of other people going out and doing a lot of neurodiversity training now who, one, aren't neurodistinct themselves. And that's not to say that you can't go and do that training, but when you don't have the proper information, you don't have that proper experience, it's actually causing a lot more damage than good. So I think this is one of the big problems that, I'm facing or I notice that's happening out there, is that we're seeing a lot of people trying to educate people on neurodiversity who don't have the correct information there. We're seeing a lot of stuff on Google these days. There's even a neurodiversity website out there that helps people to learn about it. I went on there the other day and the information on there wasn't even correct, saying things like half of NASA is like is dyslexic. It's just not right. That is, for anyone listening and you want to know where that come from, that was just made up by some small little paper in the United States. And now that's exploded into some big theory that half of NASA is dyslexic. It's just not right. So this is the thing when we're talking about education, we need to make sure it's right. We're, making sure that these organizations are getting in contact with the right people. Because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people doing neurodiversity training out there. And I would not recommend them at all. because I know they don't have the proper experience behind them. Another interesting thing you spoke about as well was technology. Now, yeah, totally. Technology is definitely key in regards to assistive technology. But one of the things I'm actually finding in regards to that is that a lot of these large organizations are not allowing people to use those assistive technologies due to security threats and all that type of stuff, which is, it just blows my mind. It's almost saying, hey, look, we've got someone in a wheelchair, but they're not allowed to use the ramps. Do you know what I mean? It's a similar type of thing. And this is where I'm like, okay, we really need to look and speak to people, these large organizations in regards to what can we use? How can we use this? Because just saying to someone, no, we can't use this because of security, I just don't think that's good enough. And that sort of shows that we're not trying hard enough to really help people, because this technology is key to us moving forward, especially in neurodiversity.
I have something to add to that. See, the thing is that we are living in a world where most of our transactions are done online. If we can mitigate threats to things like that, why can't we find solutions? Why do we stop people from using those technologies? Rather, find solutions around them, because it's just going to make them better. Technology is not, something which is going to kind of take away from anyone. Technology is just going to augment everyone's experience. So it's important to find solutions. I think, especially in large organizations where you have very dinosaur kind of rules, the whole jumping through hoops to get anything approved is very, very long. And people don't want to do the hard work of doing that. But honestly speaking, there should be, technology is no good when it's available to a select few. It should be available to everyone for it to make a real impact. And assistive technologies definitely need to be available to everyone who wants to use it, whether they need it or they just want to use it, but it should be available.
Yeah, that's the thing, I mean, even so, say for example, something like Grammarly, now look, Grammarly, it doesn't get everything right, even if you're on the premium version and all that. But, a lot of people are now using that who aren't even, say, dyslexic, for example. So, a lot of these tools can be used more than just, say, a neurodistinct person. They can be used for everyone. And I think this is something we've really got to start to look at and really start going, okay, how can we make this available for people? Okay, instead of going, no, we can't use that, let's find solutions to make that happen. I totally agree with you 100%.
In fact, in the audience, there is Sarah who's saying, as we represent 20%, why don't we work together to actively promote neurodiversity when we make our hiring and purchasing decisions? Absolutely, because I just mentioned earlier as well, I don't know, Sarah, if you joined later, but I said this very early on, that 20% of your customers, of your, of your products and services are going to be neurodiverse. You need to hear all the voices, you need to include all their their perspectives when you're designing a product, and even when making decisions, because you are not going to leave out 20% of your customer base, and therefore you need to include those voices as well. So absolutely, all of these decisions need to be made together. 20% of those voices need to be heard. And then this, you just mentioned this very interesting point about people delivering neurodiversity training. Some of it I feel, and I have sat through some of these, and it's actually it's worrying. It's like selling snake oil, because there is no real there is no real benefit of sitting through some of these things, because you don't really get anything more than what you can read and then make a decision, what I want to follow, what I don't want to follow. I think if more than training, sensitization and education is important. You can't, there is also this assumption that you can train neurodiverse people to become normal. There is no concept of normal. Normal is overrated and underrated, because normal is just the way you are. Like, in fact, Sarah is saying just the default, because everyone's normal is different. We can't box people into a certain normalcy box.
Totally. Some really good points there. Now, what should and I think we've sort of touched base on this a bit. What should employers consider before hiring neurodistinct people? We've sort of covered that. Would you reckon, Photon Jon?
Sort of, yeah. Although I would, we've sort of talked from what they can bring and the benefits that they can get. But I guess there are some things to consider, especially if you're not experienced with having an inclusive hiring situation. So what might they consider in that sense?
Firstly, they should not stereotype.
Good
Stereotyping
point.
is the most dangerous thing, because once they start stereotyping, then they start thinking every autistic individual is ABC, every dyslexic person is EFG, and so on and so forth.
Such a good point.
Yeah. So when 20 people in a room can't be the same, why do you expect 20 autistic individuals to be the same? It's really not, it's not a smart thing. So stop making assumptions. Also, probably be willing to make reasonable accommodations. Now, reasonable accommodations is not just giving them standard accommodations which you as an organization think will help them, but to understand what will help that person become successful. Do they need something different? Because when you talk about accommodations, it's not just about ticking the boxes again. Accommodations are provided so the person can be successful on the job. And also, they need to have a clear understanding about their legal obligations as well. Because the thing is, when you do not provide reasonable accommodations, it's actually, you are not within the legal framework as well. Because a lot of countries actually have this framework where equal opportunity should be provided. Yeah. So that also is very important. I think some of these things, and also everything goes down to making sure that they start educating. Education is the key, because otherwise you will always have snake oil sellers coming and giving information which is not really going to be used.
And I guess that would kind of run into the question of what advice could you give staff, so just regular staff in a company who want to help support the neurodiverse workmates?
Okay. Okay, so neurodiverse people are also regular staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they are
out there. But I hope you understand. I'm sure you understand the point of what I'm asking. So the staff that are already there, if it's not a supportive environment previously, the neurotypical staff, how would you suggest that they?
Yeah, I think it all starts with education. If it's organization driven, very good, because everyone then uniformly gets sensitized. But if not, then still understanding it, not really kind of going and making assumptions. Probably I think even in organizations they could at least have best practices. Technology is so easy now. Best practices are not very difficult to compile. So some standard information should anyways be available. Yeah, and they should be able to access that. Secondly, I think people need to be open and empathetic to different communication styles. Because I have seen instances where people get offended. I have so I'm just going to share an incident which happened in 2022, early 2022. That was like the peak of COVID here in Singapore, and we not 2021, sorry, mid of 2021. So I had an intern who worked with me. He's on the spectrum, really nice guy. But when he joined us, he had a very bad flu. He didn't have COVID, but he had a bad flu, and he would just blow his nose into a tissue and leave the tissue everywhere. It started upsetting people in the office. Now, the point is, he's not doing it because he wants to irritate someone or he wants to disturb someone. He doesn't know what to do with that tissue. So I told him, okay, I should tell him what to do instead of what not to do, because he's going to be confused if I don't tell him the right instruction. So I told him that this is a dustbin. When you use the tissue, please put it here. And his world is binary. He's not taking it with, emotion or anything. He's just taking in information. He took that information. He started putting the tissue in the dustbin. In the evening, the cleaner actually moved the dustbin. Next day, Matteo is walking all around the office with the tissue in his hand because he doesn't know where to put the tissue. Now, the problem is because his, his comfort was not there. His environment, which he was familiar with, was changed. So the thing is that today when we speak about this, we kind of find it funny as well. But that time it's a big problem. So if other colleagues would have been a little more empathetic to the whole situation, it would have been so much better, because it took him some time to actually get adapted to the office. So I think keeping an open mind and understanding not everybody is sensitized to things that we grow up with and what we consider as normal civil behavior. They are not doing it to spite you, but maybe they don't know what to do with it. I think, secondly, also just making sure that you have a welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone. So let's just take an example. Maybe your autistic colleague is not very keen on coming for your evening drinks. That doesn't mean they don't want to be friends, but they just can't. The sensory load is just too much. Maybe they just don't want to be in that bright light, noisy environment. So be empathetic about it. Be welcoming. Be inclusive.
Sorry to butt in there, right? And it's just good that you sort of mentioned this, because I remember I was speaking to someone similar into that, and so they're autistic themselves, and they were saying when they started a new job, everyone was being super friendly and welcoming them and all that, which was great, but they found that just really
draining.
Full on. Yeah, draining, because they just wanted to get to work and sort of be in their hidey hole, if that's what you want to call it. But the thing was, the employer these people just didn't understand that, So yeah, totally. And that doesn't mean that they hated those people. It was just because of the way of who they are and what they're like, it was very difficult for them in that situation.
No, absolutely, because it's also important to respect the boundaries. So
I suppose it's difficult when we talk about education to know that if
absolutely
you've got no thoughts or any training around that.
Because no one tells the neurotypicals how to work with the neurodiverse, right? So people still make assumptions. People still want to. Therefore, only thing that I keep saying, and I can't stress it enough, is that education is the key. That's what we do in our work as well, because you can't change someone who's neurodiverse. Don't expect to. But people who are neurotypical, they can learn strategies to work with the neurodiverse. And that's where the biggest communication gap is. And I use this example a lot, that one is a Mac and one is a Windows. Think of two different operating systems, right? So you still have cloud where you can transfer data. So we just try to build that cloud.
And some of us feel like we're Linux.
Something different altogether.
Yeah.
Totally. Those are some really interesting points. I was going to say something, but I completely forgot it now. But we'll move on to the next one. And being ADHD, will probably come back to me later. But what are some issues you've seen after the hiring process if the workplace doesn't understand neurodiversity? And we've sort of spoken a little bit about some stuff there. But, and we spoke a little bit about stereotyping and stuff like that. Was there any other things that really came to mind when you saw this question?
I think I can basically say, what are the consequences? If a workplace does not understand neurodiversity, let's just assume that, every company has 20% workforce which is neurodiverse who have not declared. Because you can't force people to declare, and people, even if they know, sometimes they are not diagnosed even in their 40s. because they don't want to get diagnosed. They have an idea, but they don't want to get diagnosed. They fear the bias in the workplace. But what's the result of, not really kind of understanding and having, neurodiversity in the workplace? You have high turnover. You don't know that your attrition rates are really high because of what? Is it an inclusion issue? Do people don't have the belonging? Do they feel, isolated in the crowd? Why are they leaving? Secondly, the companies also actually miss out on the innovation because, as a company, you are ignoring 20% of possible new ideas which could come in. So, that is also another consequence. Also, the whole workplace environment, if they don't understand neurodiversity, it could then, again become a case of people trying different strategies without understanding exactly how to work with neurodiverse people. The thing is, neurodiverse people are not aliens. They are around you all the time, and there is no need to kind of, make their difference a statement point, because a lot of people have, they don't prefer to kind of talk about everything, right? So there is no need to go and keep prodding that. But it's important to celebrate the differences. It's important to include the differences. It's important to, have a diverse environment where everyone feels safe, everyone has a safe place, and they can all come to work, do their job, feel happy about it, be productive, and go home happy. That's the most important thing.
You know what, something I am seeing, and I suppose it's more corporate than, say, just your normal little shop or something like that. But I'm starting to see a lot of, large organizations starting like um, neurodiversity, like, what do they call it? I wouldn't call it a club, but like it's like a place where people can come, like a committee, like a neurodiversity committee, which I think's actually, I've seen some really positive things come out of that, because I think, when you think about the term neurodiversity, it doesn't mean that's only people who are autistic, dyslexic, ADHD. It actually means everyone. So I think it's good when organizations, and I think, if there are people listening, that can be a really great start to start some committees, to start having these conversations, and even being able to share maybe some of your experiences that you have. It's not like go in and rag on someone or, bring someone down, but being able to share those experiences, and then other people being able to share some of their experiences back, can really open that door to other people's thinking and all that type of stuff. Kev, did you have anything on that you wanted to share, mate?
No, I'm pretty much in agreement in that, and I've got less experience in that, aside from the employee point of view. I just, like I said, when I was at work, working for other people, there was just none of this. These conversations weren't being had, and I was just constantly being told that I just wasn't a good employee because I wasn't being some kind of person that I'm not, that I'm incapable of being. But it was nice to eventually, get the diagnosis and then realize they were all just being mean.
Yeah, and it is funny. I look back at a lot of old employers and I think, oh my God, you were missing the point so bad. And like, I remember the situations I was put into and I failed miserably because it was the exact opposite of where my strengths sat. So I think having that little bit better of understanding may have helped that. But like you just said, Kev, there's some employers I probably worked for that, regardless if you had a neurodiversity committee or anything in place, it just would have failed miserably there because it's just about ticking those boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I like to add here, so when when you talk about communities like this in large organizations, they have employee resource groups, and I've addressed a lot of them. In fact, Will, you and I were on one of these together.
True.
Yeah. So I think organizations are realizing it. Large organizations want to be seen as inclusive, and they are realizing it. And they are trying to educate people within the company, and they are actually speaking to people who have lived experience, people who actually understand neurodiversity and neurodiverse individuals themselves. So I think that's a good thing. Now most ERG groups are actually started by people um, who have little bit of a personal stake. Either they are parents to children who are neurodiverse, they are neurodiverse themselves, or they have someone really close to them who's neurodiverse. Usually some are not, I mean, some of them don't tick all these boxes, they still want to be part of it, but most people who have something to do with it, it's personal to them, they become part of this kind of a movement. And that is also actually good, because a community is always important. uh, Anyone who so a neurodiverse individual might or might not actually go and become an active part of this community, but if there is a community, they know that tomorrow if I come forward and self declare that I'm neurodiverse, at least there are people who understand this. Also, one of the things, if we do have neurodiverse friends listening in today, please get your diagnosis, because diagnosis doesn't change who you are, it just explains who you are. It just explains it a lot better, and where you can seek help, because it's not all very bad. Things are changing, there is a lot of awareness now. And I think, especially, in fact, I think the generation after us will be a very different generation, because they do not grow up with these inhibitions. And they are not, we don't basically teach our children to kind of grow up in a certain mold, right? Because they are a lot more better informed, they understand these things. And I'm quite sure the world would be a lot better. But even our generation, I think people are very accepting. They want to be inclusive. And it's just about getting the education and the whole sensitization bit to the right places through the right channels. Because it's like, you design something for the blind by people who can see. So it's not going to be accurate, while the intention is very good. But I think when processes are designed for neurodistinct people, it's important that neurodistinct are part of making this entire product. And my own learning curve has been very, very steep, because initially when you start on a journey like this, you think, I have good intentions, I'm a technology geek, I can do it. And then you realize that you needed a rap on your knuckles, mate.
Yeah.
You're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and you know what, right? I think, and I shared something like this on LinkedIn not long ago, that there are a lot of people out there who are maybe not neurodistinct themselves, who are really trying to do something to help people like ourselves, and maybe sometimes people don't get that right. And I think in some of these experiences that I've seen, these people who are trying to help people like ourselves get almost demolished because of small little things that may not have been done correctly or something like that. And it's like, look, let's not, bury these people and pull them down. How can we support these people who are supporting us? Like I said before, the education side of things, yes, people are out there trying to really get that word out there. And yeah, they might not be hitting the spot yet, but this is where a lot of big experts like myself or other people that I work with can really help to work in with those people to get that right information. But don't bring them down because they're trying to help you, because otherwise we're not going to have these people helping us in the end,
No,
but
absolutely. I agree, because that intention itself is also very important. The more people have that intention, the better they would do with the right tools and right resources, because all the training cannot be for the neurodistinct. You can't change neurodistinct people. So please also, educate others how to work with them.
totally. So, we're getting close to the end here. So what advice would you give to the average employee who wants to support I suppose we just sort of just covered that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, we just seemed to do that without even asking the question. But
Yeah.
look, I don't have too much more. Did anyone who's listening have any questions for us today? I think we've had a lot of really cool people write through some interesting stuff there today. So it's been a good podcast. Have you enjoyed yourself? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, yes.
All right, sweet. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We really appreciate it. I think you've brought up some really good points there. I really love the stuff around stereotyping, all of that, because I think that is a big thing. You've met one autistic person. You have definitely met one autistic person. We are all completely different. So I really love the way you explained that there. Photon Jon, did you have anything else, my man?
No, just great chat. People can tune in later if they want to on our social media and all the streaming platforms.
Did you want to plug Empauwer there and where people can maybe find a lot of the work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. You could just share my email ID and people could reach out to me if they want to know more about what we do.
And you have a website?
Yes. So I could just type it in.
But the thing is, this is a podcast as well, so people might not see that, hear that.
Let me just spell it out.
Yeah.
It's www.empauwer.com. And my name is Farida Charania. I am on LinkedIn as well, so feel free to connect with me if you think there is something I can do to help, or just connect with me as well. Yeah.
Farida, it has been so great speaking with you today. Please, everyone, connect with her. Doing some amazing things. I think I might actually check out more of your stuff after this as well, because there could be some interesting stuff I could maybe potentially use. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that. But besides that, for anyone who has been listening today and you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow our social media pages there. Thank you so much, Farida, for coming on the podcast today. Like I said, it's been really great to just speak about this openly. My name's Will Wheeler, joined by my co-host here, Photon Jon. Thank you very much for listening to the Openhearted Podcast. Till next time.
Thanks.